Salam Al-Janabi kollégámmal beszélgetünk, aki a kabuli irodájában dolgozik. Az UNICEF-nek viszont Afganisztán egész területén rendszeresen utazik, és látja, hogy milyen most ott a helyzet. Salam, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. I have been with UNICEF now for 10 years. I started work in Iraq. I am from Iraq. From there, I moved on to the Syria crisis response in Lebanon. From Lebanon, I moved on to Syria, also responding to the humanitarian crisis now. And now I've joined the amazing team in Afghanistan in the last 5 months. I've managed to see some of Afghanistan before the change of power and now after the change of power. And also so I get a bit of a picture on both sides.
You've also worked in some really tough situations across the Middle East. How is Afghanistan different?
I think the main concern here is the level of malnutrition, hunger, access to education is some of the lowest we've seen around the world. Also, we have learned from these other parts of the world what an extended and long-term humanitarian crisis does to children's futures. So, unfortunately, I come from a country that has seen extended, protracted humanitarian crisis, and I know what happens to generations of children who live under it. And here, it is heartbreaking to have once again sort of talk to parents as they tell me, you know, it's been so many years, it's going to be another so many years of this, and knowing that unless they get the support they need, the future is sadly a bit dark for everyone.
Can you tell us a little bit about the situation on the ground in Afghanistan right now?
Unfortunately, at the moment, children in Afghanistan are probably facing their most difficult time. We have started the year with 10 million children in need, and today, half of Afghanistan is going to be facing hunger as winter comes. And also, we were worried that more than 3 million children are facing severe acute malnutrition. It is sadly a very difficult moment.
The World Food Programme has also just issued a warning. They said that millions will literally die of starvation unless the world does something. What does this look like close up on the ground?
On the ground, it looks like when you ask a parent what they have for their children today to eat, it will be a little bit of old bread dipped into tea. It looks like parents are doing the most unimaginable just to survive, including, unfortunately, stories that you have seen of parents selling children. On the streets, parents are selling everything. You see household items of any sort being sold just to make ends meet. And of course, this also means that millions of children are having to work.
Selling children. Can you please clarify what that means when a child is sold?
At the moment, we are seeing some of the most extreme lengths that parents are going to survive. I have talked to parents who have taken their children out of school and they have to send them to garbage dumps to just collect pieces of plastic, which they sell for that little bit of bread to eat. I have seen children who are carrying UNICEF bags, but instead of schools, there are in them boxes and brushes for shoe shine because they're having to work to do that. And as you probably have seen in the news, and also was reported to us, that some parents are resorting to say, I want to sell my child because my other 5 children have nothing to eat. So it is at the moment not anymore a theoretical or a projection. We are seeing the situation getting worse day by day. I have been to hospitals. Sorry.
No, I was just still trying to understand, because this is obviously a shocking concept for us here in Hungary as well. What does it mean to sell a child, selling into slavery?
So mostly it will probably be to a parent who doesn't have a child. It will be, there is a lot of early marriage as well. Children as young as 10, 11, 12 are being married, but that's of course in exchange for what they call mahar. So this is you get a dowry, in exchange for promising a child for marriage in the future. And these are obviously situations where parents are in the extreme. When you talk to the parents, it's not like they're doing it willingly, crying, because the other 5 children need to survive. And this is where we are at the moment in Afghanistan. Children and families are really at their wits' end.
A lot of organizations pulled out of Afghanistan when the US troops left. UNICEF decided to stay and deliver. How was this decision made? How safe is it to work on the ground? And are you able to reach the children and the families?
So UNICEF has been here for more than 70 years. We have established our relationships with communities way before everything here just went to the situation we are now. And even before the takeover, UNICEF had conversations with the Taliban to ensure access to polio vaccinators and also to ensure access to our community-based education programs. And when things got tough, this was the point where UNICEF actually insists on staying. This is where humanitarian structures, agencies, people like me, like you, the UNICEF family actually steps up. So initially it was difficult. There was a week where obviously everybody was afraid and worried and not sure what happens, but slowly, we are back in the field. Our 13 offices are operating. Half of our international staff are here, and we have thousands of extenders who are now delivering as the government systems, de facto government systems are collapsing.
How are you able to work with the Taliban?
So at the moment, with the de facto government and the Taliban, the conversation is on keeping children alive, children in school, children safe. So, as I said, in the past, this is not the first time UNICEF had this conversation with the Taliban, and UNICEF in other parts of the world always has conversations with difficult partners to make sure we reach children. So the same thing is happening here. Our amazing colleagues in the field, from day one, they made sure that they get in touch with the local interlocutors. They make them understand what we do, how we do it, and where we do it, so that our staff are safe, our partners are safe, and we can deliver to children. And this conversation continues, whether it is in the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, at all levels, because frankly, if we don't do this, the government systems have collapsed. The health system has collapsed. The education system is at the brink of collapse. So it is for us to step up. While the world figures out the politics, we keep children alive.
And the Taliban realizes the importance of this work and wants to facilitate UNICEF reaching the children of Afghanistan?
Of course, there are difficult conversations. I mean, it is not on every aspect that things are easy or accessible. We still have problems with education of adolescent girls. But on certain other aspects, we have been able, with our other partners and agencies, to actually get some leeway into it. One really important example is the polio vaccination campaign. So the Taliban has finally, after many years of negotiation, agreed to opening up for a national house-to-house polio vaccination campaign. For the first time, we will be able to reach 3 million children that have never been reached with polio vaccinations before. So it is a constant conversation, trying to make them understand that we are here to keep children and mothers safe, regardless of the politics.
So UNICEF is now actually able to reach areas it hasn't reached before, children it hasn't reached before. How close are you to the original UNICEF motto of reaching every child in Afghanistan?
It sounds a little bit counterintuitive that as the power shifted, it feels like some of the humanitarian space is opening up more than before. So yes, you are right. Certain areas we are now able to reach, which we haven't been able to reach before because of conflict, because it was actually dangerous for humanitarian workers to go there. So with this, we are hoping that in certain aspects, and especially on vaccination and health, we will be able to reach every child. And we keep working on things like education to make sure that becomes a reality as well.
Why is more funding, so vital to this work?
At the moment, there is a serious serious economic collapse happening in Afghanistan. I mean, one of the things that mentioned in the beginning, the fact that families are going to extreme ends, is because there is no money in the country. So UNICEF, not only in Afghanistan, but also in Yemen and other parts of the world, we are able to provide families and systems the support they need before everything collapses. And at the moment, we do need funding to make sure that families don't go to these extremes, that they don't send their children to work, that they keep them in school. This happens through cash transfers, ensuring that health facilities are open when the system collapses. We send mobile health teams out to the field. All of this, of course, needs the support of the international community, whether it is money, but also moral support.
What does work at these mobile health facilities look like?
They're amazing people. The mobile health teams are the most amazing people. I've seen them in Herat. I've been with them in Kandahar, and they go to the most remote areas. And what is really encouraging is within these teams, the female health workers continued working despite all the challenges. And they would start their day in the health clinic, collecting their vaccines, their basic medication. There is a midwife that goes with them, and off they go into the remotest areas. And they set up in a guest house, in a tent, depending where they are. And then, because it's close by, mothers are able to come. They don't have to travel for far, to go to the health facility. And you would see them come in with their children. We can catch up on their vaccinations. We can check their nutrition status, and also provide them with the nutrition that they need. Because in many cases, you have to catch the child before they go into severe acute malnutrition.
Is malnutrition the biggest problem that people take children to these health clinics for?
We are seeing quite an increase in malnutrition. I mean, there is about 3.2, 3.3 million children projected to suffer from acute malnutrition. 1 million of them will suffer from severe acute malnutrition. At that point, you are literally fighting for your life if you don't have treatment. And we have to make sure that we get these children before they get to that point. By reaching them through mobile health teams at their homes, at their village, you can make sure that they don't deteriorate to a point where treatment becomes very difficult.
A lot of international organizations find it hard to work with an authority that has not a very good record on human rights. UNICEF decided to stay, and you described some of the difficult conversations and the challenges. Is there a red line at all?
In terms of working with difficult authorities, we don't need to funnel funds or money through these authorities. Our conversations with the Taliban are around access and safety of our staff, our implementing partners. So as long as that is assured, we can actually deliver services while keeping with our basic, impartial, neutral, humanitarian principles to get to where we need them to get to every child. So there are always ways for us to have these conversations and to make sure that children are reached, regardless of the difficult situation. I mean, it has happened before in Yemen and Iraq. UNICEF was able to reach polio vaccination campaigns in ISIS areas. It doesn't mean that we are working with ISIS. It means that we inform them that this is something that needs to be done to keep children safe. The same thing is happening here. So as long as they understand that our humanitarian imperative is there to save these children and mothers, we are able to deliver these services, and the bigger politics, the governments of the world can figure out the bigger pictures for the systems to bring them back online, while we provide a bridge for children and mothers to stay alive in this difficult time.
UNICEF has always, in Afghanistan as well as around the world, emphasized the key importance of education as the only way to solve a lot of the other problems that persist. What about the issue of education for girls now in Afghanistan? Is this something that you're able to move on at all? Is this something that can be a basis of negotiation, that for UNICEF to stay in the country, we need to see girls going to school?
So the picture on education in Afghanistan is complex. We have, for example, since the beginning of September, the Taliban has approved education for boys and girls, primary education from year 1 to year 6. That is guaranteed for boys and girls. Then the problem becomes when we're talking about secondary education. In secondary education, boys' schools are open fully. Adolescent girls are not able to go to school everywhere in Afghanistan. And that is a problem, because that is a critical time in a child's education just before they move into their early adulthood. And that is a conversation that continues to happen with the Taliban at all levels, provincial and central. We have seen some openings. In 5 provinces in the north, the secondary schools for girls are open. In a couple of provinces in the south, the same is happening. So we see this as a positive signal. It is a very difficult conversation to have, to combine life-saving assistance with a red line. The humanitarian imperative and keeping children alive is difficult if you put a red line like that. I think we need to do both together. We need to make sure that children and mothers are kept alive in this difficult time. And at the same time, every day, every moment we have a meeting with the Taliban, the issue of the space for adolescent girls, for women working in the humanitarian space is brought to the table. So yes, it's one of the big, difficult conversations the whole humanitarian sector is having. But I would argue that we must save lives and have these conversations.
What are the other big challenges for families in Afghanistan, as well as humanitarian organizations like UNICEF?
Sadly, the situation has many layers of crisis. We are at the moment seeing a measles outbreak in certain provinces. That is very concerning. Acute watery diarrhea in certain urban areas has also been rising, the cases. We have also issues around COVID. COVID vaccinations have never been very high in Afghanistan. So there are unfortunately multiple layers of this crisis, which are putting us where we are now, with what you mentioned about 1 in 2 people in Afghanistan will be facing hunger, and the numbers of malnutrition and diseases. So the challenges are multiple and the responses are different. So we need to address these sometimes holistically, but sometimes also targeted. So health, nutrition, water and sanitation, and education. Sadly, all 4 sectors are of concern.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like this will be a short crisis. The world will need to keep paying attention, and it will need to keep helping. How do you see this unfolding in the coming years?
I mean, we talk every time the UN, even UNICEF, we talk about big numbers, and we just talked about 10 million children, and we talked about half of Afghanistan suffering hunger. The truth of the matter is, it is the 19-year-old mother in a malnutrition treatment center crying inconsolably because the doctor just told her child is going to die from malnutrition. It is that child who's having to work in horrendous conditions for a piece of bread so that they have something to eat in the evening, because he's the only breadwinner in the family. All these big numbers come down to people who are now suffering quite immensely. And the only way this can be resolved is by the world not averting its eyes. The truth is, Afghanistan is going through some of its most difficult times. It can be, for a parent, an incredibly dark place. UNICEF, we, the humanitarian community, can provide hope. And this is the point where I think all of us stand on and need to be here for. Because at the moment, hope is essential until this very complicated picture in Afghanistan is somehow resolved.
What is the daily life like at the moment for the humanitarian workers, such as yourself?
At the moment, our national colleagues are slowly going back into some sort of new normalcy. Many of our female colleagues are still not coming back to work. This is of a huge concern to us. They don't feel safe. We have not heard from the Taliban the assurances we need to hear that they come back to work safely. So in some places in Kabul, they are not back. But for example, in Herat, in some places in Mazar, our female colleagues are coming back to work. And while we are very clear about our humanitarian imperative, the humanitarian space hasn't closed up for us yet. So we are able to go out to the field. I visited Mazar, Sharif, I've been to Herat, I've been to Kandahar with our colleagues, male and female, out in the field. Amazing meetings happen led by our female colleagues in education in the middle of a room full of Taliban men, Department of Education, talking about the importance of girls' education with them. So we are in the field. We are able to deliver. The humanitarian space has not closed up. And this is where we keep going. Safety is a concern. While the Taliban might now be in control of the country, there are still areas with conflict. You probably would have seen in the news, news of explosions happening. Other groups are sort of creating conflict. So there is a concern for our colleagues, for us, but the space is open. And we depend on our wonderful, amazing local security colleagues who will make sure that the space for us is open and we can deliver.
What are your expectations for the next few weeks, the next few months?
The next few months are going to be incredibly difficult. It's already getting very cold at night. Winter in Afghanistan can be very harsh. And parents are, when you talk to them, they're already having to make impossible decisions. I mean, the little money that you have in your pocket, is it going to buy fuel to heat? Is it going to buy food? Is it going to buy a jacket for your child? So what really is important at the moment is to figure out the immediate needs to make sure the winter is survivable for many of these children. So this is our main concern now. When we look beyond the next 3 months, we need to figure out also how to make sure that schools continue functioning. Community-based education doesn't stop. The mobile health teams and health systems are still able to deliver services. So there is a two-tier to this work that we're doing at the moment, where immediate needs help children survive the winter, broader picture figure out how services are available for them.
Thank you very much, Salam, for taking some time out to talk to us. We have a lot of respect for your work. Please keep it up.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.